Have you ever had any hobbies or projects that just drag on for so long that you never actually finish it? Sometimes projects just don't get done. Today, what I'd like to talk about is a little bit more on hobbies. I really like that video that we released, well, yesterday as far as today is concerned. But by the time you're seeing this, it might be a few weeks ago. And at the same time, I'm going to attempt to work on the Sherpa. It just needs a few more things to button up. I'm going to solder on one of these crawlmaster V2s into this little piggyback that we have, at least attempt to, and put it on this 6-shooter. Now, being a 6-pole and a sensorless controller, it won't have as good a startup as a 10-pole or a 14-pole will, but it'll still be just fine for my use. Just fine. So this particular project, as you may know, being a watcher, it's been going on for a while now. And like some of my hobbies, they don't always get the attention that they need to get done. So that's what we're going to do, just give her a little bit of attention. But what I did want to talk about specifically was kind of the lifetime of hobbies that I've gone through, where it has gotten me to today in a lot of ways. And really that's about it. Nothing specific. I just kind of want to ramble today. And extra tip, we can just tape this ESC down to the table so it's not moving around. Or a little bit of blue tack. Somebody had recommended blue tack in the previous video. Well, I'll just use a little bit of blue tape. We've got it right here. Keep it from sliding. Perfect. Perfect. So, let me know in the comments, have you changed your hobbies throughout your life? Or is this something that has pretty much been the same all your life? Did your parents maybe get you involved in certain hobbies when you were growing up and they really stuck to you? Or did it do the opposite, to where your parents tried to get you into hobbies and it ended up making you not like those hobbies, and then you find your own as an adult? So when I was a kid, my hobbies were essentially riding bikes and radio control cars. And of course, what are them things? Go-karts. Loved go-karts as a kid. Still would today, just don't really have the time for them, or a good place, I guess. But as a child, a real child, I do mean, third grade, second grade, whatever grade. As a child, we had the classic 5-horsepower Briggs & Stratton engined go-karts. These days, they're all going to be generic Chinese engines that are essentially clones of the same 5-horsepower Briggs & Stratton block, single piston. And that particular hobby, I actually learned a lot about mechanics as a literal child. As my brother, he was good at working on full-size vehicles, but he never got into the small stuff. And you know how those engines go if you've ever experienced them. They can need work. They need kind of constant carburetor rebuild, stuff like that. So as a child, I learned how to completely tear down and rebuild Briggs & Stratton engines. And I was a kid that took things apart, though, all the time anyways. So it didn't really matter what it was. I'd take it apart and then put it back together. And usually all the screws would be back in the right place. But of course, sometimes there'd be a few extra screws left over. All right, let's look here real close. Ground over there. So that kind of gave me the confidence, I feel, to take on rather complicated projects. Because at the time, let's see, the first time I took an engine apart was probably 5th grade or so. And what I would do, because various problems with it, besides just rebuilding the carburetors, I had ignitions fail. The let's see, what do they call them on those? The magneto or whatever off of the flywheel. The actual coil itself would fail. So, you have to go through and troubleshoot, just like on an RC crawler when it's not working, or an RC car of any sort when it's not working. You have to run through and just troubleshoot, like, okay, what parts are working, what parts aren't working, and you figure it out. You just figure it out. Kind of learn as you go sort of situation. And so I figured out how all the ignition worked, how all the electronics worked on there. And by the end of all of this, I got to the point that I could just fix it, no matter what was going on with it. But my brother also liked to ride these things, so I learned that what I could do was fix it and then break it again, so that it was just me that was having fun with it, because my brother would sometimes run it into things. Let's be honest. He wasn't the best about carefully driving. So I would undo the ignition in a certain way to where you couldn't tell what was wrong unless you really spent the time to get into it. And then, I would drive it around. You know how brothers and big brothers and all that sometimes go. But long story short, I would fix it for myself and then unfix it in a certain way, just so I was the one that was driving it around. And as a kid, you feel, I'm the one that's fixing it. Maybe I should be the one that gets to drive it more. And at that point in time, my brother was, he had his own full-size truck, and he was into girls and things like that, so I don't think it really bothered him. But it is something that I would do as a child. We're talking 5th grade sort of region of being a kid. But bicycles was my other big hobby at the time. I would ride around all over, and mostly because I loved riding around and I love hanging out with friends and building dirt jumps and doing all the things that kids do, but also it got me out of the house. At that point in my life, the house wasn't fun to be in. I'll just leave it at that. But if you experienced houses that weren't fun to be in as you were growing up, then you'll probably understand exactly what I mean. So the bicycling is something that I've kept with me my entire life, and only until recently have I not been able to do it, because physically I was not able to do it. And that's really kind of the point of everything that I'm talking about today, is that hobbies can go in sort of an ebb and a flow. They come and they go, and you may consider, especially if you're young, first wearing eye protection, and second, don't put all your eggs in one basket as far as hobbies are concerned. So I had bicycling as huge part of my identity. I raced in college for the mountain biking team. I spent 4 hours a day riding bicycles on campus, just being a hooligan, so to speak, jumping stuff, jumping stairs, jumping off of objects, building dirt jumps on campus, building wall rides, stuff like that. I was not a rad rider by any stretch of the means, but I still like to have fun, and I knew I was never going to be a rock star at it. At the time we had all these extreme game guys, and I just knew that it didn't matter how much I wanted to be a rad rider, I just didn't have that ability to hook myself off of large objects unless I was really comfortable with it. So, it'd take a long time to work up to it. But when I turned 18, I got into breakdancing. And so you can kind of see where this is going, that all of my hobbies were really physical in nature, extremely physical in nature. And one day I was riding my bicycle on campus doing a manual, which is it's a wheelie without pedaling. I was doing this manual, and I was wearing a backpack. It was really heavy, and I did something to my back. These days we would probably say like I slipped a disc or something of that nature. Didn't really think much of it. Went home, laid down, and couldn't get back up. Had to literally call my mother to come feed me and help get me out of bed. As a college kid, it's rather embarrassing. Never really got that taken care of. And so now, being 40 years old, I frequently have lower back issues. And it's not something that, I'm not going to go have surgery, because of course all the surgeons are like, oh, we'll put them spines back together. We'll make sure that you don't have this problem again, because you won't be able to move that portion of your spine. And of course, if you can't move your spine, then you won't have a problem with that disc, right? That's not how I operate, though. Back to the point, I recently hurt my back in the same spot. Yeah, I wouldn't say being dumb, but one of the new hobbies that I picked up about a decade ago was disc golf. Again, you can see the pattern here. All my hobbies tend to be physical. Already getting to 10 minutes? Wow, I could just keep talking and keep talking. So the point that I'm not really making, but trying to make here, is that because of all of my hobbies being very physical in nature, I worked myself into a corner. And when I broke my knee a few years ago, you know, of course, due to some rib issues and lower back issues, I wasn't exactly breakdancing still, but I worked myself into a corner in that nearly everything, even honestly, even going crawling, there's a physical aspect to being able to walk on the rocks that I didn't even appreciate until after I broke my knee. And I realized, like, I've got to find some other hobby, something else. And I had played guitar quite a bit as a child, and so I tried to start picking up the banjo and doing some other things. Banjo's fun, by the way. Banjo is a whole lot of fun. People make fun of the banjo, but it's a good instrument. So hobbies morph over time, and as the viewer, I would implore you that just try to not have all your eggs in one basket for hobbies if you can. Although jack of all trades, master of none is something that applies here. I was never great at riding bikes, at least in comparison to some of the other guys that did nothing but that all the time. I was never the greatest at playing guitar. I was never the greatest at really any of my hobbies, to tell you the truth. But once I started having physical issues that prevented me from enjoying all of my physical hobbies, I really realized that, hey, I may want to do something about that. And I'm honestly still having troubles about that. You know, we talked about my gardening being really the biggest thing that I'm doing here lately. I really love gardening. So, you know, that's physical as well. You want to plant plants and move them around and do all that kind of stuff. It's very physical in nature. So yeah, that's currently where I'm at, is just trying to have some good hobbies and not have them all be in one silo, to where, you know, if I break my leg again, that shoot, I can't go out crawling, shoot, I can't do anything with plants anymore, I can't ride my bike, which I'm getting back to where I can ride a bike now without fear of, you know, crashing and really re-injuring the knee. So that's nice. This year the plan is to get back on some mountain bike trails and have some fun. Yeah, so in conclusion to the video that I really had nothing to conclude, how have hobbies morphed over your lifetime? Maybe you've had some similar issues. Maybe you've been forced to morph your hobbies. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you're still young, or maybe you are in great health and have always been in great physical health, to where it's never interfered with your hobbies in that way like it did with me. So yeah, that's all that I want to talk about, I suppose. And since we're getting up on this being a pretty long video of me just talking, I will call it there. In the meantime, I'm finishing up this little ESC. We're going to heat shrink her down, and it should sit right here. I was going to put it on the back of the ESC right there. I may still, we'll see, but it doesn't look like it's going to easily fit. So I figured, I mean, this ESC is tiny, so we can just, look at there, just shove it right there. It'll be fine. Oh yeah, that'll be just fine. So maybe I'll do that. Cool. If you do have any questions, leave them down below. Do my best to get to them. And in the meantime, thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.